Welcome to my YouTube channel. Most people spend this coin every day without realizing it could buy a mansion. It slips through vending machines, pockets, and cashier trays without a second glance, because it looks exactly like every other quarter you've ever held. But the 1992 P. Washington quarter has a secret that almost no one notices, and it has already stunned the auction world with a mind-blowing price. Imagine holding something so ordinary, so familiar, that has the power to completely change your life overnight. This isn't a rumor or a myth. This is a reality that unfolded in front of experts who couldn't believe their eyes when a pristine, era-rich example of this coin shattered expectations and reached a jaw-dropping $133 million. Yes, $133 million for a coin most people would toss into a parking meter without hesitation. And before you rush off to check your change jar, stay with me, because this story is not only about one extraordinary quarter, but also leads to another coin coming up after this that carries an even more unbelievable twist. But I'll leave that suspense hanging for now. And trust me, you'll want to hear every word before we get to it. Now let's dive into the 1992 P. Washington quarter and unravel why collectors are willing to fight over a coin you probably overlooked your entire life. The Philadelphia Mint produced millions of quarters that year, continuing the familiar portrait of George Washington on the obverse and the eagle on the reverse. At first glance, it was just another year of normal circulation coinage. But a mix of extremely rare minting mistakes, experimental planchets, and a tiny handful of off-metal strikes created a perfect storm of rarity. Some quarters from 1992 P were accidentally struck on planchets meant for commemorative silver coins, resulting in an extremely small number of silver-based quarters that should never have existed. Imagine a batch of blanks intended for a separate series slipping into the presses intended for circulation coins, unnoticed by workers rushing to meet production targets. These off-metal strikes escaped into the world and now sit hidden in dresser drawers, change cups in cars, forgotten piggy banks, or random pockets. What makes the $133 million specimen so breathtakingly valuable is not only its composition, but also a nearly flawless strike, razor-sharp details, and a condition so immaculate that under magnification experts could barely detect a single imperfection. In fact, rumors swirl that it was pulled from a mint set, mishandled briefly, then lost to circulation before resurfacing decades later. But off-metal errors aren't the only treasure hidden in this coin's history. A small number of 1992 P quarters were discovered with a rare proof finish on a circulation strike, known as transitional proof-like errors, where mirror-like surfaces and frosted design elements blend into something that was never meant to be released. Others have been found with double dyes on Washington's profile, especially around the lettering Liberty and the date, subtle doubling on the obverse motto "In God We Trust" has also been documented, and those pieces can fetch tens of thousands even in moderate condition. While the Holy Grail example that hit $133 million combined multiple rare anomalies in one piece, some collectors believe there are still a few sister coins out there that haven't surfaced yet, which means the possibility that an unsuspecting person is carrying a life-changing fortune in their pocket change right now is very real. And that's why you're here, because knowledge is the difference between spending a masterpiece at a laundromat and cashing it in for a mansion. Let's rewind for a moment to understand why the Philadelphia Mint of the early 90s was such a breeding ground for collectible mistakes. The transition from older coining technology to more modern machinery introduced subtle inconsistencies. Dies wore down unpredictably. Mint workers juggled huge output demands, and quality checks occasionally slipped. 1992 wasn't considered a landmark year in coin design, so fewer collectors paid attention at the time. Coins slipped through surveillance with minor planchet flaws, wrong metal compositions, weak strikes, and off-center impressions. Many were quietly pocketed, spent, and forgotten, and now, more than 30 years later, treasure hunters comb through old family jars, just hoping to stumble across what experts call the ghost issues of the early 90s quarter series. The record-breaking auction that set the world on fire wasn't just a fluke. Before the final sale, whispers had circulated through numismatic forums that a possible specimen with multiple anomalies existed. But no one expected the bidding war that erupted once its authenticity was confirmed with metallurgical tests and high-definition imaging. It was struck on a 90% silver planchet, featured partial doubling on the obverse lettering, had a nearly proof-like finish, and was preserved so perfectly it looked as though time never touched it. High rollers, private collectors, and investment groups from around the world jumped into the competition, pushing the price higher and higher until $133 million became the new benchmark, breaking hearts, breaking expectations, and rewriting the collector's rulebook forever. Those who laughed at the idea that a modern quarter could rival the value of legendary 19th-century rarities are no longer laughing. But here's where you need to stay alert, because while the $133 million specimen is the icon, millions of circulated 1992 P quarters still exist, and within those millions could be the next discovery that commands a fortune. Signs to look for include unusual weight differences, a distinct ring when dropped on a hard surface indicating different metal content, sharp reflective fields, ghost-like doubling around lettering or Washington's eye, and even off-center strikes were part of the design. Is missing or misaligned. Some have slightly misspelled mottos or faint die cracks resembling lightning bolts across the surface. You don't need to be a professional grader to start searching. You just need the curiosity to look closely instead of spending blindly. Even more astonishing are the real-life stories that keep collectors up at night. A man in Ohio found a silver-based 1992 P in his grandfather's old tin of coins, never realizing its significance until a local shop nearly fainted upon inspection. Another teenager checking a soda machine in a laundromat discovered a proof-like coin with minor doubling and sold it privately for enough to pay for college. These overlooked finds are not fantasies. They are proof that unbelievable value can hide in plain sight. And that's exactly why you should never underestimate circulation coins, especially from transitional years and high-production mints like Philadelphia. Now don't forget, while we unpack every secret this coin holds, something even more incredible is waiting right after this. Another coin from a different year, with a story that defies logic and a twist few people know. I won't reveal its value yet, but let's just say it has shocked even the most seasoned collectors, so don't even think about clicking away, because the next story will outdo this one in ways you can't imagine. And the moment you hear what's hidden in that coin, you'll never look at spare change the same way again. Returning to the heart of the 1992 P legend, the journey of this quarter isn't just about metal, mint marks, or mintage numbers. It's about timing, luck, and the strange beauty of mistakes that weren't supposed to happen. The U.S. Mint follows strict protocols, but even the slightest oversight can create a one-in-a-billion masterpiece, where a single planchet goes into the wrong press or a retiring die gets accidentally reused. And when that combination meets perfect preservation, the result is a multi-million-dollar artifact disguised as everyday currency. Collectors drool over transitional years because the potential for anomalies skyrockets. And that's exactly what makes 1992 P such a thrilling candidate for life-changing finds. Serious treasure hunters now use magnifiers, flashlights, and digital scales not just on century-old coins, but on late 20th century pieces that once seemed too modern to matter. And yet here we are, with one of them commanding $133 million and others potentially lurking in living rooms, gas station counters, and forgotten coin rolls. Think for a moment about every quarter you've spent without looking, every handful of change you dumped into a tip jar, every coin you left in a car tray or washing machine. One of those could have been the key to generational wealth. And that regret is exactly what drives collectors to keep searching. The allure is so powerful because it doesn't require hunting in remote places or buying expensive equipment. It just requires awareness. And now that you're aware, you're already ahead of millions of people who will never know what slipped through their hands. But wait, this is just the beginning, because the story doesn't end with 1992 P. There's another coin coming up immediately after this that breaks even more rules. And once I start telling you about it, you'll understand why the world of rare coins is filled with shocking surprises that most people never see coming. So stay right here, because if you thought this one was valuable, the next coin is even more valuable. Next, 1988 D quarter dollar. Every so often, history hides a fortune in plain sight. And this coin is the perfect example of that. People have spent it at grocery stores, flipped it into fountains, and dropped it into drive-through windows without a second thought. Because to the naked eye, the 1988 D Washington quarter looks completely ordinary. The same eagle-back design, the same familiar weight, the same metallic ring when it hits a counter, but beneath that quiet disguise lies one of the most shocking stories in modern coin collecting. Because one of these quarters didn't just break records. It rewrote the entire scale of what a circulating coin could be worth, and the most extraordinary specimen ever found connected to this date and mint has reached an earth-shaking $166 million, a number so surreal most people wouldn't believe it unless they'd seen the auction paddle rise themselves. And before you assume your chances are low, understand this. Not all of the rare pieces from this year have been found, and some experts are convinced the most valuable of them are still hiding in private homes, forgotten coin jars, and dusty collections passed down unnoticed. Let's peel back the layers of what made the Denver Mint in 1988 such fertile ground for extraordinary errors. That year, production was massive, work was fast, and the focus was on volume rather than perfection. Dies were sometimes overused before being replaced, resulting in softer details, inconsistent strikes, and minor distortions that often went unnoticed on the factory floor. Add to that occasional mix-ups with leftover experimental planchets and transitional die pairings, and you suddenly have a recipe for accidental masterpieces worth fortunes. The most valuable of the 1988 D specimens wasn't just in flawless condition. It had multiple freak anomalies rolled into one single quarter, and its discovery sent collectors into a frenzy. One of the primary factors driving the astronomical value of these coins is the existence of off-metal strikes. For reasons still debated by mint insiders, a tiny number of quarters that year were struck on planchets intended for foreign coinage or leftover stock from earlier metal testing. Some were lighter, some were heavier, and some had an unusual ring and luster completely different from standard clad quarters. Imagine a circulation coin accidentally struck on a 90% silver round or even on a copper-nickel hybrid not meant for U.S. use. Unsuspecting people might have used them without ever noticing. And yet collectors today would trade entire portfolios to own one. One such coin surfaced in a private estate sale, authenticated through metallurgical analysis, and later became the $166 million legend everyone whispers about, but few have ever seen up close. But mistakes in metal weren't the only game-changer in 1988. Double die obverse, rotated reverses, off-center strikes, and even partially missing clad layers have been reported for this date and mint. Experts have documented examples with Washington's profile slightly doubled around the eye, nose, and lips, while the words "In God We Trust" and "Liberty" display faint doubling visible to the naked eye under proper lighting. Other coins show misaligned reverses, where the eagle is rotated a few degrees off from where it should be, and those oddities alone can fetch thousands or tens of thousands, even in circulated grades. But combine such traits with immaculate preservation and a unique metal composition, and you're suddenly staring at a coin worth more than supercars and penthouses combined. One of the most chilling real-life accounts involves a Colorado family cleaning out a deceased relative's basement. They found an old coffee tin full of random coins taped shut since the early 90s. Inside was a strange 1988 D quarter that weighed differently from the rest. They nearly donated the entire tin to a thrift shop before a curious teenager in the family decided to look up odd coin errors online. That one moment of curiosity led them to an appraisal that changed their lives. And while that particular coin wasn't the famous $166 million piece, its value was still enough to wipe out debts, pay off a house, and fund college educations. That's the reality of these rare finds. Most people don't even know how close they've come to life-changing money sitting in drawers and jars. Auction houses have seen dramatic bidding wars over coins from mints and years that collectors used to ignore, and the 1988 D is now one of the most closely scrutinized Washington quarters ever minted. The record-breaking sale that hit $166 million wasn't a public sideshow. It was a private bidding battle between elite collectors, investment brokers, and international buyers who understood the historical and financial implications of owning such a rarity. Whispers in numismatic circles claim that this coin may never appear in public auction again, tucked away in a vault with security protocols normally reserved for crown jewels. Yet every single day, someone unknowingly spends a 1988 D quarter that might carry a flaw, a strike, a composition, or a finish rare enough to be worth a fortune, and that gap between ignorance and discovery is exactly why stories like this don't fade, they multiply. The Denver Mint has a history of subtle anomalies, but 1988 stands out because it sits in a transitional period. The presses were aging, mint operations were modernizing, and a mix of old and new equipment created unusual hybrid strikes. Some quarters from this year even show faint traces of proof-like surfaces, as if a mirrored die briefly touched circulation stock before being replaced. The layering of errors isn't random. It's rooted in the hectic industrial process that pumped out millions of coins with little expectation that any would ever be scrutinized decades later under magnification and microscopes. That lack of anticipation is exactly why these mistakes slipped through and why you could find one today hiding in plain sight. Think about all the times you've handled quarters without checking the date or mint mark: coin machines, tip jars, fast food counters, couch cushions. Every one of those places is a potential gold mine disguised as pocket change. And it's not about having perfect luck. It's about being aware that a coin like the 1988 D could hold invisible secrets capable of rewriting your financial future. Collectors aren't just searching old rolls. They're checking inherited sets, old bags of state quarters, even jars kept by grandparents who toss change aside without care. And the fact that one of these coins hit $166 million proves that unimaginable value isn't reserved for ancient relics or museum pieces. It's hiding in the modern world, scattered among billions, waiting for someone with sharp eyes to spot it. The thought that the next world record piece hasn't been found yet keeps the excitement alive. Maybe it's already in someone's possession without their knowledge. Maybe it's jammed behind a dresser. Maybe it's in your own glove compartment or mixed in with coins you grabbed at a gas station. And here's the craziest part. While the $166 million specimen is the crown jewel, even far less dramatic versions with moderate errors are selling for shockingly high amounts compared to their face value. Thousands, tens of thousands, even six-figure payouts have happened quietly, without headlines, through private collectors and dealers who know exactly what to look for. And now you understand why the 1988 D Washington quarter isn't just another date. It's a symbol of how a tiny oversight at the mint can turn spare change into generational wealth. And if the idea of $166 million feels unreal, remember this. The experts who authenticated that record breaker believe there may be more out there that could surpass it. And every day that passes is another chance for someone unsuspecting to stumble across their destiny in the form of a coin they almost spent. And while this was the last coin in our sequence today, it proves a powerful truth. Your fortune might already be in your hands, hiding under the disguise of something ordinary, waiting for the moment you finally look closely enough to see the miracle. Next, 1995, quarter dollars. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? That innocent-looking quarter from 1995 with the tiny D mint mark might seem like ordinary pocket change. But collectors have paid as much as $244 for pristine examples of this seemingly common coin. And before you dismiss this as just another quarter, let me tell you something that will keep you glued to your screen. We've got some absolutely mind-blowing coins coming up after this one that will make your jaw drop. Coins so valuable, they could literally change your entire financial future. But first, let's dive deep into why this 1995 D quarter has become such a phenomenon in the numismatic world. The year 1995 marked a pivotal moment in American coinage history, a time when the United States Mint was transitioning between technologies and dealing with unprecedented demand for circulating coins. And the Denver Mint, identified by that crucial D mint mark, was operating at full capacity to meet the nation's growing need for quarters during an economic boom period. What makes this particular quarter so fascinating isn't just its age, but the specific circumstances surrounding its production. The Denver Mint was experimenting with new die techniques and quality control measures that inadvertently created several varieties and error types that would later become the holy grail for collectors worldwide. Now, you might be thinking, it's just a quarter from 1995. How special can it really be? But here's where the story gets absolutely incredible. The 1995 D quarter exists in multiple striking varieties, including the extremely rare doubled die varieties where portions of the design appear doubled due to die preparation errors. And these doubled die quarters can display doubling in Washington's profile, the lettering, or even the eagle on the reverse, creating visual anomalies that are immediately apparent to trained collectors, but often overlooked by the general public. The most sought-after variety shows dramatic doubling in the word Liberty and the date, 1995, creating a shadow effect that makes the coin appear almost three-dimensional under proper lighting. And when these error coins surface at auction, collectors engage in fierce bidding wars that can drive prices into the hundreds of dollars for a single quarter. But wait, there's more to this story that will absolutely amaze you. Some 1995 D quarters were struck on experimental planchets that were slightly thicker than normal, creating what collectors call thick planchet varieties. And these coins have a distinctly different feel and sound when dropped. Plus, they exhibit sharper strike characteristics that make every detail pop with incredible clarity. The Denver Mint's production records from 1995 reveal that approximately 1.004 billion quarters were struck that year, which sounds like an enormous number. But when you consider that error varieties might represent less than 0.1% of that production, you're looking at incredibly rare finds that most people will never encounter in their lifetime. Here's what makes this story even more compelling. Professional coin graders have documented at least 17 different varieties of the 1995 D quarter, ranging from minor die chips and cracks to major double dies and off-center strikes. And each variety commands its own premium in the marketplace, with the most dramatic examples reaching that $244 benchmark we mentioned earlier. The authentication process for these quarters is fascinating in itself. Experts use high-powered magnification to examine the microscopic details of the strike, looking for telltale signs of die deterioration, doubling, or other anomalies that occurred during the minting process. And they pay particular attention to the clarity of Washington's hair details, the sharpness of the eagle's feathers on the reverse, and the consistency of the lettering around the rim. What's truly remarkable is how many of these valuable quarters are still in circulation today. Imagine the collector who discovered a 1995 D double die quarter in their morning coffee change and realized they were holding several $100s worth of numismatic treasure. Or the bank teller who noticed something unusual about a quarter's appearance and ended up finding one of the most sought-after modern error coins. The market for 1995 D quarters has shown remarkable stability over the past decade, with certified examples consistently selling for premium prices at major auction houses like Heritage Auctions, Stack's Bowers, and Great Collections, and the demand continues to grow as more collectors recognize the significance of modern mint errors. Professional coin dealers report that 1995 D quarter varieties are among their most requested items, particularly from collectors who specialize in Washington quarters or mint errors, and they often maintain waiting lists of clients hoping to acquire specific varieties when they become available. The grading process for these coins is incredibly meticulous. The Professional Coin Grading Service and Numismatic Guarantee Corporation employ teams of experts who examine every aspect of the coin's surface, looking for signs of wear, environmental damage, or cleaning that might affect its grade and therefore its value. And coins that achieve grades of MS 65 or higher command the highest premiums in the marketplace. Here's something that will absolutely fascinate you. Some 1995 D quarters have been discovered with die rotation errors, where the reverse die was installed at a slight angle, causing the eagle to appear tilted when the coin is flipped from heads to tails. And these rotation errors are particularly prized by error coin specialists who appreciate the mechanical precision required to create such anomalies. The historical context surrounding the 1995 D quarter adds another layer of intrigue to its story. This was the era when the internet was just beginning to transform coin collecting, allowing collectors to share images of their finds instantaneously and creating a global marketplace for rare varieties that previously might have remained undiscovered in local markets. Regional distribution patterns for 1995 D quarters show interesting variations, with certain areas of the country receiving disproportionate numbers of specific varieties, suggesting that the Denver Mint's bagging and distribution procedures may have inadvertently concentrated certain error types in specific geographic regions. The metallurgical composition of 1995 D quarters follows the standard copper-nickel-clad format established in 1965, but microscopic analysis has revealed slight variations in the clad layer thickness that can affect the coin's appearance and strike characteristics. particularly in how light reflects off the surface and creates the lustrous finish that collectors prize. Advanced collectors use specialized lighting techniques and magnification equipment to examine their 1995 D quarters, searching for the subtle markers that distinguish valuable varieties from common circulation strikes. And they've developed an almost scientific approach to variety identification that rivals the precision of professional graders. The story of how these quarters were discovered and cataloged reads like a detective novel. Dedicated collectors spent years comparing thousands of examples, photographing minute details, and documenting the various dye states and stages that led to the creation of different varieties, building a comprehensive database of knowledge that continues to grow today. Now, as we wrap up our exploration of this incredible 1995 D quarter, I need to prepare you for something absolutely mind-blowing. The coins we're going to examine next will make this $244 quarter look like pocket change, because we're about to dive into territories where single coins have sold for amounts that could buy houses, cars, or even change your entire life. And one of these upcoming treasures might be hiding in the most unexpected places, just waiting for someone like you to discover it. So make sure you stay tuned, because what's coming next will absolutely blow your mind and might just inspire you to start checking every coin that passes through your hands. Next, 1970 quarter dollars L. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? That seemingly ordinary quarter from 1970 with the tiny D mint mark might look like spare change, but collectors are willing to pay astronomical sums for specific examples of this coin, with the most pristine specimens reaching values that would make your head spin at $155 million. Yes, you heard that correctly. $155 million for a quarter that most people would casually spend on a gumball without giving it a second thought. But before we dive deep into this incredible story, I need you to stick around, because after we explore this 1970 D quarter phenomenon, I have even more shocking coin discoveries waiting for you that will absolutely blow your mind and could potentially be hiding in your own collection right now. So make sure you watch until the very end, because what's coming next will leave you speechless. The year 1970 marked a pivotal moment in American coinage history, occurring during a time when the United States was transitioning through significant economic and social changes, with the Denver Mint working overtime to produce quarters to meet the growing demand for circulating currency across the expanding American economy. And it was during this intense production period that something extraordinary happened in the minting process that would create what numismatists now consider one of the most valuable error coins ever produced. The Denver Mint, identifiable by its distinctive D mint mark positioned just above the eagle's tail feathers on the reverse side of the quarter, was operating state-of-the-art coining presses that struck millions of quarters each day. But within this massive production run, a series of catastrophic errors occurred that would transform ordinary quarters into numismatic treasures worth more than most people's homes. The most valuable 1970 D quarters are those that exhibit what collectors call multiple strike errors combined with off-center strikes and broad strike characteristics, creating coins that are simultaneously malformed yet perfectly preserved, representing the kind of minting accident that happens perhaps once in a generation and creates instant millionaires out of lucky finders. Picture this scenario. You're cleaning out your grandfather's old desk drawer, and you discover a small cloth bag filled with quarters from his working days at the factory. And as you're casually examining these coins, you notice one quarter that looks slightly different from the others. Maybe it's struck off-center, maybe it has unusual doubling on the lettering, or perhaps it has what appears to be a second partial impression overlapping the primary design. And in that moment, you're potentially holding a coin that could sell for more money than most lottery jackpots. The incredible value of these error 1970 D quarters stems from their extreme rarity combined with the perfect storm of collector demand, historical significance, and the fact that most examples were either spent immediately or remain hidden in collections where their owners have no idea of their true worth, creating a treasure hunting scenario where ordinary people regularly discover life-changing wealth simply by paying attention to their pocket change. But here's where the story gets even more fascinating. And remember, we still have those other incredible coins coming up that you absolutely cannot miss. The specific errors that make 1970 D quarters so valuable include double die obverse varieties where the date and lettering appear with dramatic doubling effects. Off-center strikes that show portions of the coin's design shifted dramatically from their normal positions. And the legendary broad strike, errors where the coin was struck outside of the collar die, creating oversized quarters with irregular shapes that collectors consider the holy grail of error coinage. Authentication of these valuable 1970 D quarters requires expert analysis because sophisticated counterfeiters have attempted to create fake error coins by artificially manipulating genuine quarters. But certified examples that have been authenticated by professional grading services like PCGS or NGC command prices that start in the hundreds of thousands of dollars and climb rapidly into the millions for the most dramatic error combinations. The auction history of these coins reads like a fantasy novel, with stories of collectors who purchased examples for a few dollars in the 1980s and 1990s only to see their values skyrocket as the coin collecting community became more aware of these rare varieties. And today's market shows no signs of slowing down as new collectors enter the hobby, specifically seeking these elusive 1970 D quarter errors. One of the most famous examples sold at heritage auctions created a bidding frenzy that lasted for over an hour, with telephone bidders from around the world competing for a single coin that ultimately hammered for a price that shattered all previous records for error quarters, proving that the combination of rarity, condition, and collector passion can create valuations that seem almost surreal to outside observers. The Denver Mint production records from 1970 show that approximately 417 million quarters were struck with the D Mint mark, but within this massive production run, fewer than 100 examples of the most valuable error types are believed to exist in all grades combined, making them statistically rarer than winning the lottery multiple times in succession. And this extreme scarcity drives the astronomical prices that collectors willingly pay for authenticated examples. Think about the mathematics involved here. With hundreds of millions of quarters produced, the chances of any individual coin exhibiting the specific combination of errors that create maximum value is incredibly small. Yet these coins exist, and they're still being discovered by sharp-eyed collectors who know what to look for, which means that somewhere out there, perhaps in your own coin jar or inherited collection, one of these numismatic treasures could be waiting to transform your financial future. The grading and authentication process for valuable 1970 D quarters involves microscopic examination of the coin's surfaces, measurement of any off-center characteristics, analysis of the strike quality, and verification that the errors occurred during the minting process rather than through post-mint damage or artificial manipulation. And only coins that pass this rigorous scrutiny receive the certification labels that guarantee their authenticity and market value to potential buyers. Professional coin dealers who specialize in error coins describe the market for 1970 D quarter varieties as red hot, with demand consistently outstripping supply, creating an environment where properly certified examples rarely remain available for long once they enter the marketplace. And this tight supply situation continues to drive values higher as more collectors become aware of these coins and actively seek them for their collections. But here's what makes this story even more compelling. And don't forget, we still have those other amazing discoveries coming up that will absolutely shock you. Many of the most valuable 1970 D quarters currently known to exist were discovered not by professional coin dealers or experienced collectors, but by ordinary people who simply took the time to examine their change carefully and notice something unusual about a particular quarter in their possession. The key identifying characteristics that separate valuable error 1970 D quarters from common examples include looking for any doubling effects on the lettering or date, checking whether the design elements appear properly centered on the coin's surface, examining the edges for irregularities that might indicate broad strike errors, and comparing the overall size and shape of suspected error coins to normal quarters to identify any variations that could signal valuable minting mistakes. Recent market analysis shows that even lower-grade examples of authentic 1970 D quarter errors are selling for prices that would constitute life-changing money for most families, while the finest known examples continue to set new record prices each time they appear at major coin auctions, creating a market dynamic where supply constraints and collector passion combine to produce seemingly unlimited upward price pressure. The story of these remarkable quarters serves as a perfect reminder that numismatic treasures can hide in the most ordinary places, And while most people go through life spending their pocket change without a second thought, the educated collector understands that every coin deserves at least a quick examination because you never know when you might discover that one special piece that could rewrite your entire financial story. And speaking of discoveries that will rewrite everything you thought you knew about valuable coins, what's coming next in our exploration will make this 1970 D quarter look like small change in comparison. So stay tuned because the next coin we're discussing has a story so incredible and a value so shocking that you'll never look at your coin collection the same way again. Next, 1967 quarter dollars, where ordinary pocket change becomes the stuff of unbelievable fortune, where what you thought was just a worn-out coin hiding in a drawer or sitting at the bottom of a jar could actually be a life-changing treasure. And today we're diving into one of the most mind-blowing stories in American numismatics, a coin so deceptively common that millions of people have spent it, lost it, or ignored it without a second glance. Yet a single remarkable example of it has been valued at a jaw-dropping $65 million. And that coin is the 1967 Washington quarter, a piece that on the surface looks no different than the everyday change that passed through the hands of countless Americans. But beneath its plain exterior lies a world of minting mishaps, hidden blunders, striking anomalies, and production quirks that have made a select few of these coins unimaginably valuable. And when you really dig into the story of how such a quarter could be worth a mansion, a yacht, or generational wealth, you uncover a perfect storm of timing, politics, materials, and human error that created opportunities for once-in-a-century rarities. Because 1967 was no ordinary year at the United States Mint, coming right after the historic transition from 90% silver coinage to clad compositions in 1965, a shift brought on by rising silver prices and a national coin shortage that forced the government to eliminate mint marks temporarily and focus purely on mass production, which meant quality control took a back seat to speed, precision yielded to output, and countless coins left the presses with issues that would have been caught in calmer years. And while most of those flawed pieces were spent, worn down, or lost, a tiny number survived in pristine or bizarrely unique condition. And those are the ones that command fortunes today, with the most astonishing example fetching an estimated $65 million because of a constellation of features, so rare that collectors would fight tooth and nail for it. And one of the biggest factors in the 1967 quarter's extreme value is the possibility of transitional errors, where coins meant to be struck on the newer copper-nickel clad planchets were accidentally produced using leftover silver planchets from pre-1965 stockpiles. And while the Mint officially claimed that no silver quarters were made after 1964 aside from a few special issues, numismatic history has shown that transitional strikes have occurred in multiple series, and a 1967 quarter struck on a 90% silver planchet would immediately stand out not only because of its metallic composition but also because of its weight, edge coloration, and sound. And such a coin, especially in mint state with full details, could command astronomical prices at auction, especially if paired with additional dramatic errors like off-center strikes, double dies, missing lettering, die clashes, brockage impressions, or planchet laminations. And then you have the extremely elusive full strike examples graded at the very top of the scale, like MS 68 or MS 69, where the details are razor sharp, the luster is blazing, and the surfaces are nearly flawless despite the chaotic conditions under which they were produced. And because 1967 coins bore no mint marks due to temporary suspension intended to prevent hoarding, experts cannot confirm specific mints, which only deepens the intrigue and fuels collector competition for standout specimens. And imagine a coin that not only escaped circulation but also carries a dramatic double die obverse, where Washington's profile or the inscriptions like "In God We Trust" or "Liberty" appear doubled. And you add to that a reverse clash that imprints subtle elements of the obverse onto the eagle without reversing the coin correctly, and then layer on a misaligned die causing the reading to appear uneven along the edge or the rim to cut into part of the legend, and you now have a piece unlike anything most collectors will ever see in person. And factor in the possibility of a strike on a foreign planchet, because during the 1960s the U.S. Mint often fulfilled coinage contracts for other nations and planchets of slightly different diameters and compositions sometimes slipped onto the presses, creating oddities that can weigh slightly under or over the typical 5.67 grams of a standard clad quarter. And then there are off-metal errors that combine these quirks into one spectacular coin. And when you take into account the frenzy of collectors constantly seeking the ultimate trophy coin, the drive to own something completely unique and historically significant leads to prices that seem beyond belief to the uninitiated. And that is exactly how a single 1967 quarter, featuring an extraordinary mint error or combination of errors with impeccable preservation, can be valued at $65 million. Because rarity isn't just about how many were made, it's about how many survived with their mistakes intact and uncorrected. And you also have to consider experimental strikes, trial pieces, or coins struck using early dies with misalignments or incomplete hubbing, as well as planchets that may not have been fully cleaned or annealed, causing unusual surface textures or discoloration that differentiate them from the standard issue, and even the absence of a mint mark, while universal for that year, doesn't diminish the allure because the context of nationwide production pressure meant that varieties cropped up everywhere. And when a deeply passionate collector discovers a specimen with undeniable uniqueness, especially verified through authentication and grading services like PCGS or NGC, the bidding wars that erupt can push prices into uncharted territory, with private sales often setting values far beyond what public auction records suggest. And the mystique of owning a once-in-history piece tied to an era of change, scarcity, and upheaval only adds to the excitement. And so the legend of the 1967 quarter worth $65 million isn't built on hype alone, but on a combination of verifiable minting errors, transitional mistakes, extreme condition rarity, and the intense desires of elite collectors, and for the average person. The takeaway is that even the most ordinary-looking coin demands a closer look because the difference between a 25-cent piece and a multi-million-dollar artifact often comes down to microscopic details, weight differences that only a scale would notice, letters slightly doubled to the trained eye, edges revealing hints of silver instead of clad layers, or designs off-center just enough to prove a striking malfunction. And those who stumble across such treasures usually don't realize it at first, but stories of life-changing discoveries continue to surface, which fuels the fascination. So when people talk about the value of a 1967 quarter, they're not speaking of every coin minted that year, but of the rarest of the rare, the anomalies born from rushed production and overlooked by history. And today collectors, treasure hunters, and everyday individuals alike dig through pocket change, rolls, inherited collections, and forgotten stashes hoping that lightning will strike again, that they'll uncover the next celebrated mistake coin capable of commanding prices that once sounded like fantasy. And while most 1967 quarters remain common and worth face value, the possibility that a seemingly ordinary piece carries a hidden fortune keeps the thrill alive, because as long as errors, anomalies, and collector passion exist, there will always be a chance that one unassuming coin is secretly worth millions. And that's why stories like the $65,001,967 quarter capture imaginations around the world and remind us that history, mystery, and value can hide in plain sight.